Israel remains ready for all scenarios as the expected Islamic Republic and Hezbollah retaliations for the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh and Hezbollah commander Fouad Shukr have yet to materialize. Behind the scenes, the White House is reportedly working feverishly to have an anti-Islamic Republic coalition in place and bringing pressure for the regime to limit its attack and avoid escalation in order to avoid an all-out regional war. All this, of course, amid deadly clashes in Gaza, the north, and Judea and Samaria. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz has the report.
Reports from Washington indicate an intense effort is underway in a diplomatic and military push to stave off a regional war in the Middle East. The White House effort has included back-channel talks with Iran to urge restraint and the dispatch of a U.S. naval and air armada to protect Israel and other U.S. allies if deterrence fails. According to David Ignatius from the Washington Post, White House officials said that they believe President Biden's efforts may be paying off, and Iran may be reconsidering a plan for a major retaliation after last week's assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran.
Over the past few days, we've been in constant contact with partners in the region and well beyond. In those conversations, we've heard a clear consensus. No one should escalate this conflict.
Hezbollah, Iran's proxy in Lebanon, is a separate matter, with retaliation promised for the killing of Hezbollah commander Fouad Shukr last week in Beirut. The northern front is boiling over, with 19 Israelis injured, including one critically, from Hezbollah drone strikes near Nahariya on the Israeli coast. Some of the injuries were caused by a failed Iron Dome interceptor that crashed onto the highway. The drones caused injuries and damages in 3 separate locations in northern Israel. Speaking from his bunker in Beirut, Hezbollah leader Nasrallah made clear that the major retaliation for the Israeli assassination of Hezbollah commander Fouad Shukr is still coming.
بعد اغتيال الشهيد القائد سيد فؤاد، حزب الله أيضا يرى نفسه ملزما بالرد، وإيران سترد وحزب الله سيرد، والعدو ينتظر ويترقب ويحسب كل صيحة عليه يحسبها هي الرد.
As Nasrallah was speaking from his bunker, Israeli jets were breaking the sound barrier over Beirut, forcing Nasrallah to say this.
أنه قد يلجأ العدو أثناء الاحتفال أو الآن أثناء الكلمة، وهذا بيدل أنه عقلاته كتير صاروا صغار، إلى خرق جدار الصوت فوق الضاحية.
In addition to the challenges in the north, the IDF is actively confronting Hamas on day 306 of the war in Gaza. The Air Force pounded launching sites after dozens of rockets were fired from Gaza toward Yavne in South Israel over the past week. At the end of the attack, secondary explosions were detected, which indicate the presence of additional weapons in the area. And in Jenin in Samaria, at least 9 Palestinian terrorists were killed in airstrikes targeting terror squads. An IDF raid in Jenin has been ongoing to arrest wanted terrorist suspects. Another day in the multi-front war in Israel.
Well, as the Islamic Republic and Hezbollah both affirmed, the big attack they're saber-rattling about has yet to happen. And if the U.S. has anything to say about it, it won't happen at all. Here to speak with us about the diplomatic efforts and what's going on behind the scenes is Nachman Shai, former Israeli minister of the diaspora. Thank you so much for joining us today. Just to start, what's your take on these diplomatic efforts by the U.S. to temper a strike by the Islamic Republic on Israel? Is this something that could conceivably put the regime off of attacking Israel altogether?
I don't believe that the United States and Iran can convince each other to look for a peaceful solution, because the dialogue between the two countries has been a whole failure for quite a long time. But what the Americans can do is just show a little bit a little bit of their force in the Middle East and in the Gulf to the Iranians, and by demonstrating their military capabilities, deter Iran and its allies from launching any operation or any strike against Israel. The diplomatic language, as far as I'm concerned, has died. The only way is to tell Iran what Biden said at the time, don't. And I believe they understand that language, and just 4 letters, don't. It speaks for itself.
Now, there has been some talk of a preemptive strike by Israel. What is the likelihood and under what circumstances might we see the Israeli government take this course of action?
Well, historically, I'm not sure that our viewers remember all our history. We have launched a preemptive strike, very successful one in 1967. And 7 years later, when the circumstances were leading towards another armed conflict between us and our neighbors, at the time it was Egypt and Syria, Israel, upon American request and under pressure, decided not to launch any preemptive strike. It's still still a dilemma which stands constantly on our agenda. So if we know for sure that tonight at at a certain minute between 1 to 2 o'clock, they are going to attack Israel, maybe we'll take some action. But in general, just because we know that they are preparing and we know what their intentions are, I don't believe Israel will take a preemptive strike, especially when the battle will be sooner or later on the international arena, on the legitimacy of our operations and their operations. So, and taking that into consideration, Israel will wait. I know it disappoints many Israelis that would like to see Israel launching or taking action or launching a preemptive strike first, but that's the way it is. We live not just by ourselves here. We live as part of a kind of international coalition. We need the United States, we need Britain, we need Germany, we need France, we need some other major allies, and they will not forgive us if we launch a preemptive strike first, and then the world will blame Israel for the war that will be followed.
Well, we are out of time, but I'd like to thank you, former Minister Shai, for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Now, amid escalating tensions and, of course, the threat of retaliation from the Islamic Republic, Israel is on high alert, bracing for mass casualties. In northern Israel, where Hezbollah has been launching rockets since October 8th, Rambam Healthcare Campus in Haifa is at the front line, ready to handle the most critical of cases. In this crisis, your support can make a huge difference. Please scan the QR code to stand with Israel and support Rambam's life-saving efforts, ensuring that they remain equipped to provide this crucial care.
Israel is currently under attack and is bracing for a potential mass casualty event in the coming hours, days, or weeks. In the north, where Hezbollah has been launching rockets since October 8th, Rambam Healthcare Campus has become the primary hub for treating the most severe and at-risk patients. In 2014, Rambam opened the Sami Ofer Fortified Underground Emergency Hospital. This 3-level, 1,500-vehicle underground parking lot can be converted into a 2,000-bed hospital within 72 hours.
In case something happens, we are the solution for another 2 hospitals in Haifa. Within 24 hours, we will absorb everybody into Rambam and we work under the same umbrella together.
When we look at the emergency department, so we provided ourselves with more information about how to receive a lot of patients in a mass casualty while we are being attacked, and we need to transfer some of the patients to the underground hospital without harming the patients.
70% of the patients in the hospital are not bedridden, right? So if something happens, we have to bring everybody down in less than 8 hours. So those that can walk will walk down, and they have already the beds ready for them just to walk in.
While treating the most severe injuries and health conditions underground, the hospital is also preparing to offer support for those suffering from trauma, anxiety, depression, and other mental health challenges.
We already have hundreds of soldiers and civilians that need some psychological, psychiatric support for post-traumatic stress disorder, and we anticipate much more.
Many wonder about the hospital staff during an emergency. Rambam believes that it won't need to ask. Its staff will volunteer to stay and treat the sick.
If we expect the staff of the hospital to come over here to work when there are military confrontation, we have also to give a solution for the children. So on the second floor, there is a certain area that we have a kindergarten for about 500 children.
Now the hospital and its staff remain on heightened alert, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring.
We have friends all over the world, people that really partnering with us, with the vision of the hospital, with the commitment of the hospital. And we look at them really as partners, as a long-term partners, and making all this dream happen. You know, we can have an idea, but without them, nothing will happen.
Partner with Rambam Healthcare Campus and be a part of securing the health and resilience of the State of Israel, today and for the future.
Incredible. Make sure to scan the QR code to stand with Rambam and, of course, stand with Israel. Yesterday, the Israeli government identified what they believe to be the last missing person case related to the October 7th massacre, confirming the death of 75-year-old Bilha Yinon. Let's see the full story. On Tuesday, the IDF confirmed the death of Bilha Yinon from Netiva Asara on October 7th, after months of being unable to confirm her passing due to the fact that Bilha's home was completely destroyed by the terrorists. Newly obtained evidence and testing has confirmed she did not survive the attack, and her death was formally declared by health experts, police, IDF officials, and the chief rabbi. Bilha's husband, Yaakov, was also murdered in the attack. After October 7th, the remaining family, Bilha and Yaakov's 5 children and 11 grandchildren, chose to sit Shiva for them both due to the fact there was no conceivable way that they could have survived. Yaakov's remains were identified a week later, but Bilha's death was not able to be confirmed until now due to a lack of DNA evidence. Bilha, who was an early childhood educator and an artist, was also a lifelong peace activist who believed in building bridges, something her children have publicly stated they will continue in her honor. Hamas has named Yahya Sinwar as the new political chief following the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. Sinwar, the architect of the October 7th massacre, remains in hiding in Gaza. So who is Yahya Sinwar? ILTV's Mayan Hoffman has more.
Hamas has named Yahya Sinwar, its Gaza leader, as his successor to former political chief Ismail Haniyeh, who was assassinated in Tehran last week. Sinwar, considered the architect of the October 7th massacre, has been in hiding in Gaza, eluding Israeli attempts on his life since the war began. Sinwar was elected by Hamas's 50-member Shura Council, a consultative body elected by Hamas members in Gaza, the West Bank, the diaspora, and security prisoners in Israeli jails. He became the most powerful Hamas leader after Haniyeh's assassination, which has brought the region close to a wider conflict, with Iran vowing severe retaliation. Israel has not claimed responsibility for Haniyeh's assassination. Born in a refugee camp in Khan Yunis in Gaza, the 61-year-old was elected as Hamas's leader in Gaza in 2017. He is known for his ruthless tactics and unwavering hostility toward Israel.
بطوفان جنود دون حد سنأتيكم بملايين من أمتنا مدا بعد مد.
Sinwar previously led the Al-Maj security apparatus, which tracked, punished, and killed Palestinians suspecting of collaborating with Israel's Secret Service before he was imprisoned. He joined Hamas when Sheikh Ahmed Yassin founded the group around the start of the First Palestinian Intifada in 1987. Arrested in 1988, he was sentenced to consecutive life terms for planning the abduction and murder of 2 Israeli soldiers and the murder of 4 Palestinians. He was one of 1,027 Palestinians released from Israeli prisons in a swap for a single Israeli soldier in 2011. During his 23 years in Israeli jails, he learned fluent Hebrew. Foreign Minister Israel Katz commented on Sinwar's appointment by saying the decision was yet another compelling reason to swiftly eliminate him and wipe this vile organization off the face of the earth.
And now here to discuss the impact of Yahya Sinwar assuming the position of Ismail Haniyeh is Avi Melamed, Middle East analyst and author. Avi, so great to have you with us. Can you start by telling us a little bit more about the selection of Sinwar to lead the political faction of Hamas? Does this mean Sinwar will be out of hiding?
Thank you for having me. No, the answer for that is no. Actually, it's very interesting because this is a very complex story. Hamas factors present this whole nomination / election sort of Sinwar as the replacer or the one that replaced Haniyeh as an expression of unity. But beneath the surface, there are totally different things. One of the things that Haniyeh's assassination exposed was this growing inner tension within Hamas that was boosted following October 7 as criticism in the Arab world and the Palestinian on Hamas mounted because of the catastrophe Hamas has inflicted upon the Palestinians. And one of the things it revealed is that beyond the personal rivalries within Hamas, between Haniyeh and Sinwar, between other people in the top leadership, it also basically further sharpened the differences and the power struggle between a couple of camps within Hamas, particularly, namely, the Iranian and the Turkish camp within Hamas. Khaled Mish'al, who is much more affiliated with the Turkish camp, didn't even attend the inauguration of the Iranian new president. So it seems like that there is an attempt of Hamas to send a sign of unity by basically crowning Sinwar as the leader. But as I said before, beneath the surface, the picture is by far much more complex.
Now, what do you think the ramifications will be practically when it comes to hostage negotiations?
Well, the major thing to remember is the following one. In the end of the day, the person that physically holding the hostages, or some of them, is not Haniyeh and it's not Mish'al, it's Sinwar. And he's holding them as an insurance policy. That was the situation before the assassination of Haniyeh, that continues to be the situation following the assassination of Haniyeh. Is it going to further complicate the negotiations deal? Maybe, not necessarily. But we have to bear this thing in mind because in the end of the day, this is the most significant thing to take into consideration when we think about the whole process of the discussions and the negotiations between the sides. Sinwar is interested in an insurance policy, and for him, the best insurance policy is to continue and to hold the hostages as of now, with all the ramifications that comes along with that.
Now, of course, some have said that the selection of Sinwar shows Hamas is determined not to change course, as you mentioned briefly, unity. When it comes to this war, do you agree with this characterization of the, rise of Sinwar to be the leader, or there's simply no one else Hamas wanted to replace Haniyeh?
It seems to me like, and we have to remember that there has been an ongoing debate within Hamas. It didn't start following October 7. It was the way before October 7 between what I call the more pragmatic camp and the more dogmatic camp. And Sinwar definitely is coming from the more dogmatic camp. So now this debate is further boosted following what happened following October 7 and the ramifications on both Hamas and the Palestinians as well in Gaza. We have to remember there is a lot of anger on Hamas and particularly Sinwar, including in Gaza Strip. Now, when we look at the whole picture, the comprehensive picture, sort of speaking to say, one of the interesting things to notice is that in the Arab world, most of the reactions to that step that Hamas basically was doing, most of the reactions are negative in the sense that the Arab world is saying to Hamas, now when you did that, you actually deepen the crisis and deepen the lack of exit from the crisis, and by doing that, basically you are deepening and dragging the Palestinians into a deepening crisis. One of the most significant things to understand in that context has to do with the question of the day after, because in the Arab world, by the way, many governments and rulers in the Arab world would like to see Hamas vanished in the air. It's not going to happen. But in the Arab world, now there is an understanding that as long as Hamas is basically as an attempt to hold on its lines and to express sort of unity, as long as Hamas is clinging to the Iranian/tough hard line, it will be more and more difficult for the Arab world to navigate in a way that in the end of the day could help the Palestinians. And that in its turn is going to refuel Palestinian anger and criticism on Hamas. I think that Hamas is heading to a deepening crisis.
All right, well, we are out of time, but Avi Melamed, I want to thank you so much for your insights on this issue.
Thank you for having me.
And now to the U.S. elections. Last night, Squad member Representative Cori Bush was unseated in her contentious primary election. ILTV's Maayan Hoffman has more on this story.
Thank you, Emily. I'm standing here in Jerusalem outside of the U.S. Embassy to share with you some exciting news about the elections in the United States. Last night, there was a big upset in St. Louis, Missouri. We were able to drive out Cori Bush, one of the far left members of the Squad, in order to replace her in the Democratic primary with Wesley Bell. A very similar upset to what we saw in June with a $14 million campaign working toward overthrowing New York Representative Jamal Bowman. Yes to success. Yesterday, Kamala Harris, as we know, picked her vice presidential candidate. The man is Governor Tim Walz from Minnesota. Overnight, I was doing some interviews to learn about how the Jewish community feels about Tim Walz, and what I can tell you is they're happy with the selection. He is a pro-Israel candidate. He has fought strong against anti-Semitism. He, in fact, wrote his master's thesis on Holocaust education. This is a person that the Democratic Jewish community can get behind. The only concern, they say, is that Representative Josh Shapiro should have been selected for the job from a swing state of Pittsburgh. The challenge was that there was a week-long campaign calling him a Zionist genocide Josh, they said, in order to promote this idea that a Jewish candidate should not be running for vice president because of his stance on Israel. And the Jewish community feels that the pro-Palestinian community in this incident won in that particular case.
All right, thank you, Maayan. Well, as the Olympic Games in Paris begin to wrap up, Israeli athletes and Parisian officials joined the International Olympic Committee in Paris on Tuesday to commemorate the 11 Israelis who were murdered during the 1972 Olympic Games in Munich. ILTV's Devo Klein has the full report.
Israeli athletes and officials were joined on Tuesday by the mayor of Paris and the International Olympic Committee to pay tribute to the 11 Israeli Olympic athletes who were massacred by the Palestinian terrorist group Black September in 1972. Amid the heightened geopolitical tensions following Israel's war with Hamas, the memorial ceremony, which was originally due to take place before the start of the Games just outside Paris City Hall, had been moved to the heavily protected Israeli embassy. At the event, IOC President Thomas Bach stressed that the 5th of September 1972 is the darkest day in Olympic history. The Munich attack on the Israeli team occurred when 8 Palestinian terrorists infiltrated the, at the time, poorly secured Olympic Village and broke into the Israeli athlete apartments. In the bloody rampage to follow, the gunmen would kill 2 Israeli athletes as they attempted to protect themselves and take 9 hostage. The hostages were later killed after a failed rescue attempt by German police. Yael Arad, the first Israeli athlete to win an Olympic medal in Barcelona 1992 and the current president of the Olympic Committee of Israel, was also in attendance. Arad said that the presence of 88 Israeli athletes at the 2024 Paris Games, 52 years after the Munich massacre, sends a powerful message. We are here, Israeli sport was not destroyed, and terror did not win.
Let's take a look at the weather forecast. Mostly clear skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 23 degrees Celsius or 74 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we should be seeing partly cloudy skies and hot temperatures set to rise and reach highs of 35 degrees Celsius or 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Emily Schrader. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.